All right, I think I pushed all the right buttons. I sent our broadcast to the wrong page initially, so
You need to
surprise.
write one of these like scripts or macros where you can literally just press one button and it does all the buttons for you.
Yeah, right. It's pretty funny, but
It's
yeah.
it's
So
amazing. We've been doing this for like 4 years, and I think you've really only messed it up completely once.
I
Where we
I think you're right. And hey, by the way, happy fourth season. This is our
ah,
fourth season. Let me look at our Buzzsprout stats here. And if anyone is looking to listen to this only, you can download the audio version at your favorite podcasting place. Let's see. We have all time 11,647 downloads.
all right, that's pretty good. Shoot,
Yeah.
it's like it, and even if that's just me downloading it 11,000 times, I mean, it still counts.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
our
exactly.
most popular place that people are getting our audio only version is at Apple, then Spotify. Our most popular episode all time is Ask Us Anything About Triathlon.
I know. How crazy is that?
It
We need
is.
to
And
we need to do a part B.
yeah, and Dr. Stacy Sims is a close second at 21 views behind. And then Lauren Goss and Jordan Rapp are coming in behind. So that's pretty cool that our guests are, or our episode is the top one, but our
Exactly.
guests are play a major role in this. So how about that?
Awesome. Awesome. And we're gonna have a guest on the 26th. So 2 weeks from now, we're gonna have Justin Reale, pro triathlete. He's gonna join us. We're gonna talk about aerodynamic testing. So that's gonna be a good episode. So John, how's training this week?
Cold.
Yeah, right. It's coldest.
It's
I think it's the coldest week of the year. They said. Well,
yeah.
it's only the second week of the year, I guess. So it's the coldest week.
Did you get snow on your side of town?
We didn't, but there's lots of snow up like in the mountains, really close.
Yeah, yeah.
Did
We
you?
just behind us. We didn't get it here at our home address, but 2 miles away there was snow.
So this is a strange time. I'm coming off of being sick, so I've been sick for about 3 weeks,
Hmm.
and I got on the bike yesterday for the first, like literally the first training I've done since before Christmas.
Yeah.
And man, it's tough.
Oh, hmm.
I was like, at first, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try and keep my heart rate low, like 130,
Yeah.
and next thing you know, it's at 150,
Oh
and
boy.
and I'm not even working that hard.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, it's amazing what 3 weeks of
Mhm.
not doing a whole lot will
Yeah.
do. I know it'll come back,
Yeah.
you know, but and then I jump back on again today and went just a little further. I only went 30 minutes yesterday and
Mhm.
35 today. But man, it's so hard,
Yeah.
especially like when I'm still have a little chest
Yeah.
congestion.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm trying not to push things too hard, but and it's really tough. And I know there's a lot of people sick right now.
Yeah. There is.
There's several people that I coach that have been sick and are coming back from being sick, and it's hard to be patient and
Hmm.
understand that it's a long journey.
Yeah.
So, oh, Cosmo's in the
I
frame.
see Cosmo. Hi, Cosmo.
Hey, there he is.
There's our mascot.
Yep.
So,
Uh,
and
Go
I
ahead.
know I don't have to tell you, but I think this is one of the things we're going to talk about tonight is when people do come back from, what like what you're dealing with or have been dealing with, you gotta, boy, I tell you, it's just little steps coming back. And like you've got to play the long game. And, the mistake I do see people make is they've taken a month off, even healthy, and they're,
Yep.
doing holidays and traveling and what have you. And then they come back and want to go do a 40-mile bike ride. And, you gotta ease in. You gotta build consistency into your training program, and especially as we get older,
Yep.
that is such a key to long-term success.
No, it's true. Like before, I got sick, I easily could do a 2 or 3 hour ride.
Yeah.
Not easily, but by the end it'd be
Hmm.
hard. But I was like, okay, I gotta be smart. A half hour, and then today was 35 minutes. I
Yep.
said, well, maybe tomorrow I'll do 40.
Hmm.
And it's just like 5 minutes at a time. It's
Yeah.
not, could I go longer?
Hmm.
Sure. But
Right.
I'm trying to once again be smart
Yeah.
and build slowly back into it, because the last thing you want to do is revert back, to that
Right.
state of sickness or bronchitis or anything that can come about. And something we hadn't talked about before, and I don't want to scare people, but there is something called myocarditis,
Mm-hmm.
or inflammation of the heart, which is secondary to a viral infection.
Right.
And it gained prevalence. People learned about it from COVID, but this is something I've been teaching in class for a long time. Is this is actually something that does happen in a small percentage of people, and it's one of the reasons you actually want to go back to sports relatively slow, especially if you've had a viral infection, and any cold or flu, or it is a viral infection. So you do want to be careful.
Mm-hmm. No, totally. And exercise is stress. Being sick is stress.
Yeah.
And if you start exercising too soon, you're adding stress on stress. It's not a linear additive. It is exponential. And the negative side of having too much stress is you go backwards instead of forwards. But you've done this plenty of time each year in terms of taking some time off and then coming back, and your crystal ball works really well. And if you go consistent training in 10 weeks time, in 12 weeks time, your fitness level is going to be at a level where you can do more stuff.
Yep. And we talked about it many times, like the linear progression. And
Hmm.
it's funny. I don't know. There was this old listserv called Wattage. I don't know if you were ever on that.
Oh no, I wasn't.
I'm actually, it's funny. I'm still on it. Like I still get these
Oh,
emails, and it was funny. Like it was yesterday. A guy posted, okay, if I do, what was it? Basically, he's trying to figure out how he could raise his CTL by one every day,
oh, okay.
and it was something like if he started out at 42 minutes and then added so many minutes a day, could he basically what would be the program to get there? And one of the responses was like, well, why would you want to do this? It doesn't make sense.
Uh-huh.
But in some ways, it makes total sense, right?
Hmm.
If you could have this very small linear progression that you just tax the system a little bit more every day,
Yep.
um, physiologically, it probably doesn't work,
Hmm.
but there's some physiologic benefit to it. Now, I think we'd all agree that we want to overload the system and then allow maybe more time to recover. And this basically the theory was, well, you'd never have enough time to recover.
Hmm.
You get to certain points where you're just like your number keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you actually do have to have some recovery. But it's something that, like, when I'm coaching people, that's like one of the cornerstones of the prescription of training is slow progression.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I had to quickly Google this, but the classic story of strength training is, and now I know it's Milo of Croton, I think is how you say it, where he carried a baby bull every day, and that baby bull obviously was growing, so he got stronger at this very, small incremental step. As the bull grew, he got stronger, and the idea behind that is exactly what we're talking about, is that progression, and a planned progression and a steady progression. And if you just look at day one and day two, you may not be able to really see a difference in the size of the bull in this case,
Yep.
or really in the one CTL improvement. You probably really can't see that, but yet that's how we get improvement over long periods of time.
No, it's so true. And like thinking about just for me today, 35 minutes compared to 30, there's no difference.
No.
Like like when you look at my first race I do, something like, oh, that 5 minutes different you did
Yeah, right.
4 months ago is paying off now. There's literally 0% change.
Yeah.
But over time, this is compounding interest, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So we're going to talk today. We've got this list of 12 things that one of our friends of the show, Rick Simpson, posted for us on the Facebook page. And this is from Dr. Steven Seiler, who many people will know has as an expert exercise physiologist from Texas who lives in Norway.
Hmm.
And he's very well cited in the triathlon world and in the
Yep.
endurance world. And he basically was on a podcast and came up with basically 12 kind of rules of thumb
Hmm.
for endurance training. And so we're probably not going to hit them all today, but we're going to hit some of them. And so I guess we just kick it off and start with the first one because we're kind of bouncing around this anyways.
Yeah.
And
This is
yeah,
the key
yeah.
right
The
here.
number one is start with universal good practices, then sports specific, then individual optimization.
Hmm.
So this is a big thing.
Yeah,
Actually,
it
we
is.
could have a whole podcast just on this one thing.
Hmm.
So let's say start with universal good practices. So John, what are universal good practices for triathlon training?
Well, universal practices for training are frequency, intensity, time, and mode. That's the basis of any training program is manipulation of those four factors. And
Yeah.
so for triathlon, obviously it's swim, bike, and run, frequency, intensity, and time.
So what's good practice though?
Well, okay, and this is something I really like about Steven Seiler. He's spoken to this point, is there's a lot of research on training programs, but you've got to be really careful when you look at research on training programs because historically, the research for training programs have been 8 to 10 week programs, maybe a 15-week program. And the reason for that was because a lot of this research was being done at universities, at colleges, and the semester is either a 10-week or a 15-week semester.
Yeah.
And so if you do some pre-testing and some post-testing, and then you build in some type of training program, you can evaluate that training program over the course of the semester. And the other thing that these research projects were really well known for is they were taking college age students who were signing up for this course, whatever the course may be, some type of physical fitness course, and they were untrained to begin with. And then you put them through some type of training, and lo and behold, 8, 10, 15 weeks later, they're more fit. Well, if you want to show the effectiveness of a training program, you always start with unfit people because you have a lot of room to go. But if you want to really tease out the individual nature of a training program with a fit person, that's a little harder. And that's where the details, the nuances of building a training program are still relatively unknown. There's the general principles, but the details are not always easy to tease out in a research world because if you start with someone who's a 65 ml per kg per minute VO2 max, VO2 max may not change after 10 weeks,
Yep.
but they may be faster because of what's happening at the sub maximum levels of intensity. So I know I talked around your question, but I think with Seiler putting this down as one of his points, I think it's really neat that he's recognized the pragmatic aspect of looking at the literature, but then also looking at practically what's really happening.
So John, how many good research studies have you seen longitudinally of triathletes in their 50s?
Oh gosh, yeah. Were we talking? Yeah, we were talking about research on older athletes in general, and that's really hard to come by. And I can't think off the top of my head of one. I'm sure that there's something with masters athletes somewhere, probably swimming more so, and maybe cycling. But yeah, finding training studies for people over 50, let alone older, is really difficult.
Yeah. And so a lot of this ends up being anecdotal
Hmm.
and experience. And one of the things that I've run into with some of the people that I've worked with is they've worked with other coaches who are coaching them. So let's say they're in their 50s, 60s now, that maybe had worked with one other person that was that age that was potentially was an elite athlete
Hmm.
or an ex-pro, right? We run into this a lot. Like, we see like ex-pro athletes and, we've had some on. I mean, we had Mark Allen on, right? And he talked about his coaching and, he's in his 50s now. Well, how he trains is different than the, age grouper off the couch,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Because he was the best athlete in the world
Hmm.
at one point and he was that because of some reasons, right? Some physiologic underpinnings.
Hmm.
And we really do need to think about that when we think of the aging athlete in particular,
Yeah.
that, we can't extrapolate the N of one from like elite athletes that are aged, or we can extrapolate from elite athletes in their 20s and 30s,
Hmm.
or even age groupers in their 20s and 30s to those in their 50s and 60s.
Hmm.
And I think we need to be really cognizant of that. And, I know that Joel Friel has that book, Fast After 50, and it's a good read. But I think that, in some ways he's too aggressive. In some ways he's not aggressive enough. But that's just his experience, right? It's the experience of people that he's worked with. But the problem, even with him, is the people that can afford to hire him to be their coach tend to be very well off financially, and probably are top level age groupers. And so he, and I don't want to pick on anybody, but his experience is not the experience of everybody.
Right.
And so we do need to pay special attention to that. So then, I mean, I didn't answer the question either. So what are universal good practices? Well, we've talked about them before, so I'm going to let you hit on some.
Yeah. Well, I want to build on what you just talked about, because that goes along with even looking at the body of research on training programs based upon collegiate aged subjects that are going through a semester starting as an unfit group and trying to pull information and apply it to you or to me or to other athletes that already have a level of fitness is really, really difficult. Let me make it more complicated, and then I'll throw an answer out for this in just a second. But right now, if you look at your CTL now, you can probably go back in Training Peaks and find an equivalent CTL that you were at some point. Maybe not. You're probably
my CTL is like 12 right now,
I mean,
so I doubt it.
You've taken some hits here.
Yeah.
But on a typical season, you could say, well, maybe you start out at this number.
Yeah.
It is so hard to build a program and predict the changes in fitness, not the changes in CTL, but the changes in fitness over an 8 to 10 week period. Even for experienced athletes, we don't have a very good crystal ball. We don't have a way to take an athlete on and say, okay, you're this fit right now. This is what I'm going to do. And I predict with 100% certainty, this is what your fitness is going to be like in 10 weeks. Can't do it. And the problem is that training program is so complicated. There's so many things that we all have to deal with in life, and you have to adjust because stress changes throughout the program, not only for just physical fitness but for life. And then there's also this whole psychological aspect of training and having a belief that the training program is even working. So it's really a complicated process. I was at CES this last week, and there's different AI programs that they're selling that they're saying we're able to predict training load over this period of time, but at the same time they're not accounting for that psychological piece or that part of your day routine that the watch doesn't capture. So that's why it's hard for both you and I to say here's the general practices and that you need to employ. But the one that I think we've already talked about that I think is the foundation is the consistency of training.
Yeah, and I think that's universal good practice is consistency, but there's still going to be bad consistency.
True, this is true.
So consistency can be, hey, I'm going to run once per week, and I'm going to run. Let's say I'm going to run 13 miles once a week.
That's true.
And I'm going to do it every single week, and then I'm going to ride 100 miles once a week.
Yeah.
And I'm going to swim 750 once a week, and I do it every single week. That's consistent, right? Probably not very good.
Yeah.
So I'm going to, kind of add another layer and something that you always talk about. And I think it's a hallmark of the conversations that we've had. And it's something that I really think a lot about when I'm coaching people and training myself is train today so you can train tomorrow.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And always have that in the back of your mind, no matter what your training session says, like on your, if you're a coach or you're going through a book or whatever website, if today you're pushing it to the level that you know what tomorrow's exercise is supposed to be and you can't do it, and in the back of your mind, oh my gosh, tomorrow's really going to suck because today I'm doing this. Well, that's not good, right? And so I think that's a universal good practice is to think of tomorrow and to think of the day after.
Right.
And don't do today. That's something that's going to hurt you for tomorrow.
Yeah, no, you're right though. And with the consistency, you can have bad consistent, workouts, but And I think that maybe we go back to Seiler. He was really the advocate for that 80-20 concept
Yeah,
of 80% of your training should be low intensity and 20% vigorous to high intensity. Because the
yeah,
problem that a lot of people have is they work towards the middle ground, and they're mostly spending their time around 50% of their intensity, or 50% of their time on the moderate intensity. And
yeah.
no, I still said that wrong. Most of their time doing moderate intensity as opposed to low or high, and breaking out those categories. And he's very much a proponent of that.
Yeah.
And I think, that doing that low intensity, higher volume possibly, um, is that consistent uh, base of a program.
Yeah, and I think that's your universal good practices.
Yeah, yeah. But
Um,
it on paper, but people not universally done.
yeah, I think another universal good practice, and this is once again something I talk to people about all the time, is listening to your body,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like if you're starting to feel your calf not be well,
Mm-hmm.
you got to listen,
Yeah.
right? That's a good practice,
Mm-hmm.
is to listen to your body and know when to dial it back.
Mm-hmm.
Also, know when you're feeling great.
Yeah.
Listen to your body. If you're whatever training program you're on, if the day is your day and everything's feeling great, well, that might be the day actually to switch it up. And today I'm actually going to, instead of doing my long slow, I'm actually going to do some intense
Yeah. Right.
work, and like kind of feed off of what your body is telling us. And once again, your watch can give you some of these metrics now, and their
Mm-hmm.
loop straps and aura rings and all these things that can help with that. But there's nothing as good as just your own feeling.
Yeah. Right. And that's a psychological part, and that is often a part that a lot of our algorithms miss. Now
Yep.
I know, there's different programs that you can put in a subjective rating, but there's still not a good way to capture that psychological bit that you can objectify, or you can make it objective in terms of building into the program. And this is why coaches are often very highly valuable, is that sometimes they can be that sort of third eye on what's going on, and give you that objective viewpoint of the training program. But it's hard to sometimes. It's easy to say to listen to your body, but sometimes it's hard to say, well, let me just go a little bit longer and see if it will go away. See if this pain will go
Yeah,
away.
and that's dangerous.
Yeah.
In the true discipline in that case is to stop,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when like you are a disciplined, mature athlete,
Yeah.
when you can say no.
Right.
And
Right.
I've told the story before. Like I've been the athlete that hasn't,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm self coached. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm the one that wrote the program,
Yeah.
so but it's just and there's other issues that get into this, and we've talked a little bit about this, and that's like this social media pressure
Yep.
to, like, you don't want to put on your Strava 1.5 mile run walked home,
Right. Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't look very good.
No, that's right.
And so my advice to people is, on those days, just delete it, and it's a rest day. It wasn't
Yep.
a failed run or a
Mm-hmm.
failed bike. It's just, if you feel that there's pressure of other people watching you,
Yeah. Right.
you know
Or make your channel private and
yeah,
don't feel that pressure, because you can still get some of the benefits of logging things. Well, it's
exactly.
funny you say that, because actually I don't know, I did a 1 mile run today, and I still
Yeah.
uploaded it to
And I
Strava.
judged you. I
And
looked at
fortunately,
it and
I pushed the, upload, and I'm like, I don't care.
yeah,
So
because you did it for
fortunately I'm at
you.
that spot. So
It's like same with me. Like I did a 30-minute ride.
yeah,
I published it.
yeah,
Like I'm not embarrassed by it. I'm
no,
actually felt like, wow, great. Like I actually am doing something.
yeah,
Yay.
yeah, that's right.
But
That's right.
there are people might look at us and say, oh, Ted just did a 30-minute ride.
Right, right.
What's going on?
It's okay. And we both have reasons, and there
Yeah.
doesn't need to be an explanation at
But I
all.
could be feeling I could be
Yeah,
feeling completely great.
yeah,
And my life is just hectic today, and I could only do a 30-minute ride. And I shouldn't be embarrassed to, oh, someone might see that.
right.
So
And
no,
and likewise, we shouldn't be judging anyone else when they upload and
Yeah.
you look at it and you say, well, that's what they can do. Great job. You know, whatever it is. And
They did a 2 mile run, and that's
yeah,
where they were at today. And
yeah,
great. It's Hey, they did 2 mile run. 99% of the population did not no mile
that's
run.
right. That's right. Yeah.
So yeah, good.
So I'm going to add in another principle here. Specificity
Yep.
is generally accepted that if you want to be a good runner, you got to run. If you want to be a good biker, you got to bike. If you want to be a good swimmer, you got to swim. If you want to be a good whatever, you need to do that. But that's specificity with an asterisk, because we know that there's a lot of cross training stimulus that you can use and take advantage of. So, for example, I did a 1 mile run on ground today, but I also ran for 15 minutes in the water.
Yep.
I'm doing that because that 15 minutes crosses over, and we've done research on this, that it crosses over to on land running, but now you don't have the the wear and tear of the run mileage. And so, trying to find where things cross over, and same thing, I love swimming because that fitness can carry over. Maybe not the skill, but the fitness can carry over to biking or to running.
Yep. And we've talked about this before as well. Like, I'm a big proponent of hiking, especially in the
Yeah,
off,
yeah, that's a great one.
and getting out there for 3 hours of on your
Yeah.
feet and hiking in the
Mhm.
off season.
Mhm.
To me, that's just as good as going for an hour and a half run.
Yeah.
You know, it's not specific, but it still fills the low level aerobic training that we're looking for.
Mhm.
The other one that I'll talk about, and I do coach a few people that are just runners. They're not triathletes.
Right.
But one of the things I make them do, they want to work with me, they have to ride
You have to ride. Okay. Oh, good. Yeah.
or do something else. Or they want to
Yeah.
swim, that's fine. Riding seems to be the easy one.
Mhm.
And they have to do it 2 times a week.
Okay.
Right. And so my runners that are doing marathon running, they run less than pretty much any of their compatriots,
Right.
but they get an extra 2 or 3 hours of aerobic training
Mhm.
in a different mode.
Right.
But they're still running plenty, like
Mhm.
maybe up to 10 hours a week of running, which is a lot of running.
Mhm.
But then we're building fitness in another mode, and
Yeah.
it's not specific,
Right.
but the heart and lungs don't know the difference,
Mhm.
right? And the mitochondrial density that gets built up in the legs, it doesn't
Yeah.
know any different.
Mhm.
And I actually think that more runners would do well by doing this, and more cyclists would do well
Mhm.
by running.
Right.
Even if it's just once or twice a week, just changing the mode can decrease the risk of injury to the main mode or main sport that you're trying to do. Um,
Well, and
yeah,
especially in running, like if you added another 2, 3 hours of running,
yeah. The
now
risk of
you're
injury.
increasing the risk of overuse injury at that point.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to the UNLV cross country coach. This is several years ago. It's a different coach now, and trying to like push this thought process.
Mhm.
And they did it, and several of the kids were actually doing significant amount of biking, and they saw great results.
Mhm.
Because once again, like, you can only run so many miles.
Right. Right.
They're running 70, 80 miles a week.
Mhm.
Once again, try getting another 2 hours in. I mean, that could be potentially
Yeah.
for those people another 15 miles.
Mhm.
Right now, you're looking at 85, 90 miles,
Mhm.
maybe 100 miles a week. And
Yeah.
that's we know that most people will break down. And especially if you're trying to
Mhm.
build mileage. So, no, I think that's one of the benefits of doing triathlon,
Right.
right? Is you can get away, like the people I coach, you can get away with running less than 25 miles a week
Mhm.
and still be able to
Yeah.
run well
For a triathlon, right?
for a triathlon,
Mhm.
because you're getting so much of the endurance from your swimming and your biking.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, I love it. All right, let me throw out one more
Yep.
uh, best practice or common accepted practice, and this is one we've talked about all the time. Too much change too fast is going to lead to an injury. I know that's a negative. That's not really towards a training program, but if you get hurt, you can't train. So the whole idea of a good training program is to stay healthy for a long period of time.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And it goes back to what I'm doing, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
even today was my first day back at the gym as well, like back to lifting weights. and I backed everything off
Yeah.
and just did good form. I probably only did like maybe 60% of what I was doing, pre-Christmas. Not and I felt good. Like I could have done more,
Right. Right.
but stopping and knowing, hey, like we're building slowly back to where we want to be and letting the ego go.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy for our own ego to get in the way. So no, I think that you're 100% right with that. Is
Well,
the
and
best
I
way to
said
avoid
that.
injuries is to not increase load too quickly.
Yeah, yeah, and I said that, but I remembered Seiler has number 9, rest days are highly underrated.
Yeah.
And that's part of the idea there is stay healthy. You got to stay healthy in order to have a training response.
Yep, exactly. All right, so let's talk about number 2, and this will probably take us the rest of the time.
Yeah,
So
this is an interesting one.
training is an optimization challenge, not a maximization
Right,
challenge.
right.
Okay, so John, how many times have we kind of beat around this bush before? Like a lot, right?
Oh, totally. And we use the phrase find your minimum effective dose. Try to identify what that minimum is. Now, what's interesting is optimization is a term we use when we aren't trying to maximize or minimize something. So it's somewhere in the middle. It's optimal. And so it is good that it's he's de-emphasizing maximum here, and really you're trying to figure out he's using the term optimization, but I would rephrase this as find your minimum effective dose.
I like it and I don't, because some people, the minimum effective dose is not making them happy,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? So if you truly love training,
Right.
you can do more than the minimum and be happy,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I actually think that once you get really fit in triathlon, you probably can train less and still get the same results.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe you just love swimming, right?
Yeah.
And like, I love swimming 4 days a week and doing 4,000 about 4,000 yards. If you did 10,000, you probably could stay the exact same speed. But
Mm-hmm.
if it makes you happy,
Yeah.
makes you feel good. So I think that's part of the optimization is like you have to do the minimum effective dose, but also do the dose that makes you happy.
No, I totally love that, and I totally agree with that. But let me give you an example of
Okay.
why it's important to know the minimum effective dose is because yesterday we had a big department retreat, and that took up most of our day. And I
Yep.
said, I still want to get training in today. So what's my minimum effective dose to get a
Yep.
training response? So I did 1,000-yard swim, 30-minute bike ride, and I did 20 minutes or 15 minutes in the running in the water. And that put my mind at ease saying that was my minimum effective dose.
Yep.
Now, I agree with you. You can't do that every day because eventually that minimum effective dose will not be a training response. You always need to be upping what that minimum effective dose is, or managing what that minimum effective dose is. So, yeah, no, I'm not saying do the minimum effective, but know what it is,
What it
so
is. Yeah.
that on those days that you've got other stresses, you can say, let me do the minimum effective dose, and then I'm going to be okay. But I guess that does lead to coming back to doing this optimal range. Uh, but to get an optimal, you need to know the minimum and I guess a maximum as well.
No, it's something really interesting. Like, and I'm a firm believer in this. If you tell me I've only got 10 minutes to train today,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say, okay, go run for 10
Yeah.
minutes.
Hmm.
A 10-minute run will actually give you something.
Hmm.
Like it'll give you significantly more than 10 minutes of doing nothing.
Hmm.
And it's hard because people are like, oh, I run an hour
Hmm.
to get my run in.
Right. Right.
I'm a firm believer that 10 minutes can actually give you something, even a 10-minute
Yep.
swim. Now, the problem with a 10-minute swim is it takes you 30 minutes to do a 10-minute swim,
Yeah.
right? So if you got that 30 minutes, you
Got
probably
to
should go
work on
for
your transitions.
you should probably go for a 30-minute run if you got the 30 minutes. Because by the time
Right.
you change and
Yeah.
you
Yeah. Yeah.
so usually the quickest and easiest thing, if you have seriously limited time, right?
Hmm.
Because you got a department meeting and you got
Yep.
this, you got that. And it's like, oh my gosh, and I got my kids and I got this, and like, okay,
Yep.
can you carve out 10, 15 minutes, just go
Right.
for a run
Hmm.
and run hard, you
Yeah.
know, because it's only 10 minutes. Um, Probably gonna get a lot out of it.
Yeah, yeah.
And
No, well, I advocate, taking stairs wherever you can take
yep,
stairs. Like, even if it's just 5 flights, or even if you're going to the airport, use the stairs instead of the escalator,
yep.
and get that training response that way as well, especially on travel day where you're not able to get your run in or your bike or your swim, but you can take stairs,
Yep.
and that will help give you something.
So let's jump on the second piece of this. Is it's not a maximization challenge.
Yeah, yeah, right,
So
right.
this has been known for a long time in endurance sports,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the thought in the this goes back into your history of physical education and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. In the 70s and 80s, there was a lot of runners that were just like, okay, I just need to do more.
Yeah, that's right. And so and so's doing more. I need to do
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I'm running a 2:10 marathon
Mm-hmm.
and I'm doing 100 miles a week, well, if I do 110 miles a week, I should be able to do a 2:05
Yeah.
marathon.
Right.
And that thought process is probably even worse in cycling,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, because you don't have nearly the risk of injury.
Yeah.
And we look at like professional cyclists, and they're doing 30, 35 hours a week in the saddle.
Yeah.
Um, Once again, it's a different thing. Like they're, it's not a contest to see how many hours you can train.
No.
Like nobody wins um,
Mm-hmm.
a race because they train more hours than the other person.
Right.
It's actually really, this is kind of some funny stuff, but you know, there used to be a lot more robustness to Strava before people could actually do private stuff. It used to
Mm-hmm.
everything kind of used to be more public. And I can remember many times like looking at the race results, and you used to be able to do the flybys.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
you still can, but
Yeah.
you still like now so many more people are private.
Yeah.
And many times I'd look at the flybys of a race, and I might, be racing somebody, and they'd be a younger person. They'd be like maybe 15 years younger than me. And I'm looking like, oh my gosh, like I train twice the amount that this person trains and they beat me.
Yeah. Right. Right.
How's this possible? Like
Mm-hmm.
this year I've done a 10,000 miles on the bike. They've
Yeah.
done 4,000
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they outbiked me,
Yeah.
and it goes to show that it's not the number of hours,
Right.
right? It's there's a lot of nuance
Yeah.
to this, and your goal should not be, okay, like, I need to make it so I'm training 30 hours a week,
Mm-hmm.
or 250 miles a week on the bike, if that's not optimal for you.
Mm-hmm. No, and part of the problem of getting to that maximum range that you can tolerate is that's the injury. That's a high risk of injury at that point. If you are trying to shoot for over 20 hours a week, 25 hours, 30 hours a week, you're really running, or in the red zone in terms of injury. Now, pro triathletes have a different life. Well, not all pro triathletes, but we'll talk with our pro triathlete friend and get a picture into his world. But if your job is to be an athlete, you can manage hopefully some of your routine so that you're not running that higher risk of injury. But for us age group athletes, we've got a job, we've got families, we've got and pro triathletes do too. But I'm overgeneralizing. But we have other things, and if you're trying to add in a part-time training job on top of your full-time job and taking care of your family, something's got to give somewhere.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned injury, because it's not just injury, it's illness.
Illness, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes we think of, oh, well, I've never been injured. My knees are fine, my hips are fine. Um, but one of the things that we see, and we talked about when we talked about relative energy deficiency, is things like endocrine disorders,
Yeah, right.
right? Thyroid problems,
Mm-hmm.
adrenal issues,
Mm-hmm.
testosterone issues. With chronic overtraining, we do know that these things happen. And so once again, just because you can do a lot
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean it's optimal.
Yeah, right.
And it may feel optimal for a short amount of time,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like, because it's like, oh, my friend's doing this amount, so I need to be doing this amount, or so and so is doing this amount. So, and finally I've made it. And the pitfall that happens, and John, it happened to me. I'll be completely honest with you. When I was overtraining, I was having some really good race results,
Mm-hmm.
right? but I was probably, well, some of the least health of my life,
Yeah, right.
right? So is that good?
Yeah.
Is that optimal? Because
Mm-hmm.
probably I could have trained 20% less, had
Mm-hmm.
the same results, and been healthier.
Yep.
So I think it's something that so the challenge is to optimize and not to maximize.
Mm-hmm.
And maximal is not optimal.
That's right. And that's not to say that your training program isn't shooting for peak hours for a week,
Oh,
because you are building up to that, but you're not trying to build up to the maximum hours that you can tolerate.
yeah. No, it's true. Like, yeah, it shouldn't be that like Sunday afternoon, after your huge week, that you're devastated. You can't
Yeah,
get
yeah.
off the couch,
Mm-hmm.
because you've literally for that week you've maxed like, you've
Yeah,
got everything you can out of your body, and now you got
yeah,
nothing left. That's a good indicator that now I'm not, and don't get me wrong, like I get like you'll do a long ride on Sunday in the summer and it's been hot and you feel kind of
mm-hmm.
crummy,
Yeah,
but there's a different feeling of like crushing it all week long.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that's kind of interesting is, and this does happen with athletes, is, well, it's Monday, it's a new week.
Mm-hmm.
My training calendar is new,
Yeah,
but your body doesn't know it's Monday,
no, that's right.
right? It might know it's Monday because maybe you did something different on the weekend as far like staying up or whatever, but your body still is like recovering from the week's training before, and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't just turn over a new leaf. Oh, it's Monday, it's a fresh start.
Yeah, right, right, right.
It doesn't work like that.
Not a,
It's kind of like everyone, like, it's a new year. Oh, it's a new year, great.
well,
Your body doesn't know it's a
not a
new year.
clean slate, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, my hamstring is going to feel better because it's a new year.
Yeah,
Your hamstring
right.
doesn't know it's January 1st.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Oh, that's tough.
yeah,
Well, I like this. This is a great conversation. Let's tackle number three, though.
yeah. Focus on the big things first, not marginal gains. Think Maslow's hierarchy. That solves many problems.
Hmm.
And once again, this is hallmark stuff that we've always talked about. You know, there's so many marginal gains to be had in
Hmm.
sport and in
Yeah.
triathlon. We've talked about, like, and we talked about it just yesterday, like waxing your chain.
Yeah.
That's a marginal gain.
Hmm.
But if you have the wrong gearing on your bike, like that's a big problem. Right?
Hmm.
Like if you have too big of a front chain ring or too small to do the climb, having nice wax on your
Yeah.
chain
Right.
doesn't matter.
Hmm.
And we think about this in the bigger picture of things. People want to get really dialed into the training program.
Hmm.
Oh,
Hmm.
if I just do these workouts, good things are gonna happen. No,
Yeah.
there's no magic workout. It's once again
Hmm.
like things we've already talked about. It's consistency, and it is slow progression.
Hmm. No, I love it. And I would emphasize all that even more for the new triathlete.
Yeah,
When you're coming into the sport, the whole idea is just train. Go after the big, low hanging fruit, and, put a few more miles in on the bike, swim a little bit longer, swim straight, work on the run a little bit more. And you see big gains in the sport that way. Uh, I think a danger that a lot of triathletes specifically fall into is they do chase that marginal gain. They
yeah,
chase that, you know, well, if I get 1% better here, or, half a percent here, or maybe 5 watts here, that those wattage points won't matter much if you're doing a 70.3 and you decide to stop at the aid station and refill your bottle,
yep.
because you
Stop.
haven't done the big thing about learning how to grab a bottle, refill while you're moving. You've just lost all your gains, all your marginal gains by stopping at the aid station. So, going after those big things is really important, especially for the beginning in getting into the sport. But then even, those who have been around, still looking at the big picture of how to keep the training, focused on the big part, and then work in the marginal gains. I
Yeah,
think that's where you can have a little bit more success.
yeah. And the error that I see most in people, honestly, is the marginal gain of running too fast too often.
Yeah, yeah, right.
It's or even riding too hard too
Mhm.
often, and this is the Seiler principle of the 80-20. And I actually think it's more of a 90-10 for triathletes, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Especially when you're doing long distance, you're
Mhm.
doing 70.3s or Ironmans.
Mhm.
I think there's very little to be had in running fast,
Mhm.
especially
Mhm.
running fast,
Yeah.
because you're almost always on tired legs. And when we look at you pull your age grouper aside and you look at them, and they're running 3.5 hour Ironman. That's pretty slow running,
Right.
right? That's what is that, 10 something per mile
Mhm.
pace,
Yeah.
and then they're doing these sprints at 6:30 pace. I'm like, this is not very specific. And
Right. Right.
what are you
Right.
ultimately trying to gain here?
Mhm.
And I'm a big proponent of being very, very careful with that. And those are the shiny things, right?
Mhm.
Oh, I did this track workout today, and it's like
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
sexy.
Right. Right.
What's not sexy is going for like an 18-mile run at 10 minutes per mile,
Yeah. Right.
and you take like 7 water breaks along the way.
Mhm.
Like, that's
Mhm.
not sexy,
Mhm.
but that works.
Yeah. No, I
So
love that. And then a whole nother area, and we've talked about this too, is getting the bike fit correct.
yeah,
And you can get the most aerodynamic position, but if you can't sustain that position for the entirety of the race, you're going to be up out of aero, and that's going to negate any of the gains that you would have had in that aero position. And so, trying to find the right position for you as an athlete, for your fitness level, and what you can tolerate, that's actually really important.
it's interesting you mentioned that. I've actually just started to. This is actually literally this week. I'm like, okay, if I'm going to get back to eventually riding a time trial bike, because I
Hmm.
haven't been able
Yeah.
to, I've got to increase my mobility again.
Yeah. Right.
And this is actually big, big picture things, right? Because if I
Hmm.
can't get to the position,
Right.
well, I'm going to have to change my bike, first
Yeah.
of all.
Right.
But I'm like, okay, I know like I need to increase my hip mobility and I need to increase
Hmm.
my back mobility right now. And it's big stuff for
Yeah.
me. Now, once you have it, mobility may turn into something marginal.
Hmm.
Like, just maintaining that might be marginal.
Hmm.
But if you don't have it to begin with, that actually becomes that's big stuff,
Right.
right? Like, if you can't get to an aerodynamic position on your bicycle because of lack of flexibility,
Hmm.
that actually might be the most important thing,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Because what good is adding 20 watts if you
Right.
if you got 50 watts worth of drag
Hmm.
because you can't get to a very aerodynamic position
Hmm. Hmm.
purely because of lack of flexibility, which is something that you can gain.
No,
So
that's great, and it's good that you mentioned, because I was going through this in my brain as well. As I've transitioned to more indoor training, but I'm not in aero position when I'm primarily when I'm on the indoor trainer, because I've got a different bike for that. But I
yeah,
know in my brain, as I get close to a race, I've got to start working in riding on the bike, not necessarily for the fitness part, but for the position part, and making sure that I've got that ability to hold that position,
yeah,
flexibility wise, or even just comfort wise, in terms of relaxing the right muscles at the right point.
yeah. So my point was the big thing will probably be different for everybody,
Hmm. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like what are the big things? So focus on the big things first. Well, I mean, we talked about this last week. If you can't swim
Yeah.
1.2 miles and you can do a 70.3,
Right.
that's your big thing,
Yeah.
right? You need to focus
Hmm.
on that. And so really, like, maybe with your coach or with yourself, is like, think about what are the two or three big things
Hmm.
that I need to do before I start worrying about the little
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
No, I
Uh,
love that. And you can go sport by sport too. You can say
yep.
in swimming, I can't swim straight. Well, your big thing is you'll save 2 minutes by swimming straight. So,
Yep.
spend some time on that, or on biking, it's the position or something, whatever it is. So that's a great point.
Yep. Or, one of the things that always kind of bothered me is, I couldn't run fast downhill.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah,
Really good
right.
running uphill, but I would just struggle running downhill.
Hmm.
I remember this is like 5 or 6 years ago now. I really put in an effort to like really learn
Hmm.
how to run downhill, and I watched some videos on how to do it, and
Hmm.
I went out and I practiced it. Now, but I'd be super careful not to get injured while doing
Yeah,
it,
right.
and it made a difference, right? And it was a
Yeah.
it was a big thing for me. I'd be in these races with rolling hills, and then I'd pass people on the way up, and they get
Yep.
passed on the way down and pass
Yep.
people. And it's really frustrating to me. And like, well, I have the fitness, obviously. I just don't have the technique.
Yep.
And that was my big thing for a while. It's like, and that was not marginal for me at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
like right now that I haven't really run much in the last 6 months. That's not a that's not a big thing for me. Right now, just
No,
actually
right.
just start running.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the big thing will change.
No, I love that. Yeah. So this is an excellent point. Each one of these have been really good.
Yeah. Okay, so it's 7 o'clock. So I think that maybe we should call it for the night. I know
Yeah.
you got to get to bed because
Yeah.
you're doing double duty, and it's our last week of no classes. We start class next week, so
Yeah.
we gotta rest up. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but we can continue to tackle more of these next week, and then remember in 2 weeks we got Justin. He's gonna join us, and I'm super excited for that talk.
That would be great. Awesome. Well, hey, have a good weekend of consistent training.
Oh, I'm really I'm actually going to swim tomorrow for the first time in a month as well. So
Oh,
yeah,
awesome.
I'm actually pretty excited to get in the pool, and uh,
Rejuvenating.
it is. And it's mentally very fatiguing
Yeah.
to know that you're losing fitness. And
Oh,
and
yeah.
for those of the people that follow the show, they all know about my surgery last summer, and I lost all my fitness. Didn't train
Mm-hmm.
for like 2 months, and finally regained it, and then now I got sick. And
Mm,
it's very frustrating to like sit there and like know like you can't train, and
yeah.
you and,
Right.
and you and you shouldn't
Right.
train.
Mm,
So coming back is always
yeah. No, that's hard. And I think we probably do need to find a good guest speaker on this part because when something's taken away, and we've talked about this, it's harder than when you make the choice to not do it anymore. And so when we're sick or injured, and we're not able to do the thing that we enjoy doing, that's hard. But if we decide to retire from the sport or do something different, then that's a different situation. So
it's
we
completely
should find someone to talk about that.
awesome. All right, John. Well, I hope you have a great weekend,
Yeah,
and
thanks. You too.
hopefully you get some good training in. And
Yep.
even though it's going to be cold, I think I'm going to be mostly indoor. I think this weekend.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah.
Well, have a good weekend.
You too. Bye
All
bye.
right. Bye.